Welcome to my lovely IHP community. We have a solstice at our lovely hands, and so a bit of channeled guidance is due. We'll start with reading some, and then we'll get into a little bit of conversation. With Safe Haven and Safe Base differentiated selves, the Enlightenment Soul Age Group 5DC, functional adult, is consistently sharing compassion beyond a reason with people. Self-empowered, enlightened, C. Unconditional love and compassionate mirrors. They are shared with anyone who is choosing to be their self, who is moving out of that lovely blinders of the adaptive child. So they're consciously aware that their self is whole and unique, and that it's okay to be imperfect and flawed, and that they're not defective. There's also compassionate mirrors and unconditional love being shared with those who are choosing to be their self from their heart, with authenticity, vulnerability, and openness. So being able to have raw conversations, afraid of loving, not afraid of loving, getting angry, not angry, all of the emotions, but being able to be vulnerable with them and talk to people with consistency to bring forth their expanding human consciousness life, and to live from an unconditionally loving heart that accepts imperfections and flaws in oneself and others. By the way, I'm outside, so you'll hear background noise that I can't do much about. No one is defective in the eyes of a secure attachment differentiated functional adult person and a 5D mystic light worker, especially in the Enlightenment Soul Age group. Those individuals who are here at this point in time, with or without the psychoeducation, know that no human being is defective nor deserves to sit in this shame defectiveness cycle that will have began at their birth, and that will lead them to be in compulsive activities, ruminating activities, loop thinking, this biochemistry of fear, which won't seem like that. It's masked by shame, blame, fault, revenge, spite, envy, but not where you work with it. Envy in a way that gets into becoming vindictive. Things of that nature are not actually the optimal ideal of your body. You're in a not only yellow or red, so your fight flight is activated, or that shutdown in the sense of, complete emotional trigger blackout. If somebody gets angry and they just start yelling at you, they're blacked out. They're in a pattern. They can get out of it, but they need to want to work with their anger or their frustration, with their emotional triggers. If they don't want to, then they're not going to learn to unlearn that in time, and to bring that complete healing from that heartbreak, gut wrench. Because see, anyone who's reactive in such a way will have had experiences that have brought them to be in this state. The yellow is what the movies make very popular. We'll get to that in a minute. But when somebody actually has a reactiveness, usually they do feel shame about it. If people are 5D, we support with compassionate mirrors. And that's because we're not going to shame someone, as the Zen tradition story from Sadhguru goes. That just makes more rigid, more harshness. Because when you punish someone, when you look at someone with a shaming or accusing or blaming or faulting or angry eyes, you're mirroring that back to them. They're already in the state. You haven't taught them anything different. They haven't felt anything different. So they're not seen, they're not soothed, they're not supported, they're not given the ability to expand. Compassionate mirrors expand. Shaming mirrors are nothing more than two people and they're more in shame, basically. Because if you got functional adults, nobody's shaming. But if you got adaptive children, they're all in those yellows, shaming. So no one needs to be and stay in these broken heart, gut wrench feelings, in this fear and loneliness of shame defectiveness. We have great somatic, sensory motor, and trauma experts who can help. Psychoeducators, the good ones, explain very well how shame defectiveness is an adaptive strategy that comes from not having contingent communication and repair of ruptures attachment figures. Also having no safe haven and safe base homes or loved ones to turn to. Shame leaves a person with heartbreak, gut wrench, torn apart feelings of defectiveness and loneliness that get masked with inner critic and outer critic talk and thinking, as well as suppressed by activities and habits such as the consumption of alcohol, drugs, sex, food, and other self-soothing mechanisms acquired in time, and that become compulsive due to them being the go-to for stress relief when unpleasant feelings, emotions, sensations arise from the unhealed shame cycle, the heartbreak, the unresolved trauma. So the implicit memory activity that comes up, attachment ruptures, also insecure attachment wounds, and just insecure attachment ruptures overall. These compulsive activities are only deemed normal because in our human history, there was the absence of good psychoeducational knowledge. And also for some time now, we have movies that make these excessive consumption of alcohol, drugs, sex, food, and adaptive child behavior. So yellow, people yelling at each other that they don't hear, having, not the ability to just say we agree to disagree and talk. No, we have examples of adaptive child behavior in movies. All the drama makes everything seem like it's the norm or it's cool. So it's like high school, but worse because they're calling it that's what it means to be a human versus no, that's what it means to be a human in your self-defense, nervous system response, fight, flight, freeze again. So your reactiveness and you not actually in your cortex and in your ventral vagal, your social engagement system. So you're not actually using your infinite higher human consciousness potential in any way, shape, or form. Oneness consciousness, your mind, masculine, your body, your feminine, integration of the mind allows left, right to communicate. You choose this if you do inner growth versus inner critic. And explore with compassion, because nobody is defective. We're all flawed and perfect, but we're all different. That's the whole point of different personalities. So compulsiveness is what we want to focus. It's not about the drugs, the sex, the food, or the alcohol. It's the compulsiveness that a person, if they cared of their own body, their own inner well-being, they would be like, wait, I'm doing this thing in a certain way. Maybe I could reconsider and get to moderation. Okay, the part about the psychoeducation with shame is important because what's being suppressed and masked, again, are sensations that don't get contemplated because of the rumination cycles. Because ruminating is in your temporal junction. That's not actually going to help you to move out of a shame cycle. You're going to stay in one. It's when you can sit with two, neutrality and duality, and say, wait a minute, okay, so I have these feelings. I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm mad. But the situations that took place, yada, yada, it's normal. You choose equanimity all on your own, and it is practice by not suppressing. It's processing. It's called when you process the emotion. And really what it is, you know what? I'm not the only ego in town, so of course I'm going to be pissed today, maybe. Oh, they said this word to me. Well, no big deal. Growing up, I was a teenager and I was like, well, people are going to insult me. It's going to be okay because I know my own worth. I don't need you to use nice words with me. You can do what you want. It's not going to break my heart because my heart is a muscle, one. But two, it's your behavior, not mine. And three, again, when your integrated mind is working always, you're like, you didn't do anything to me. There's no physical threat. The people who still are reactive with words and emotional stuff are the ones who are not mastered in their, again, wholeness yet. So they haven't tapped into infinite higher human consciousness potential, 5D enlightenment, all that great stuff, which comes easy for those of us who have a love cycle. So we know we're imperfect and we know we're flawed and we don't feel shame about it. And if people don't like us, we don't feel shame about it. And if they continue not to like us, we don't feel shame about it. We respect what we know we need to respect, the laws, and then we go and vote and we do what we want to do to help the planet, like gossip. This is, again, drama land. We don't really get involved in any of that if we can. And we're pretty smart. We pretty much 5D people, know how to disengage from the adaptive children because we look back with compassionate mirrors and it's like, hey, I think that word was really interesting. Maybe you could choose another word next time. And as we get older, we get even better at it, by the way, because love is what grows, not the other stuff. Here's where, let's go back to my lovely writing. Also, for people who point fingers, cast stones, and claim they're doing right and shaming people, they obviously don't know about the shame defectiveness cycle, and they don't understand what they're doing. 4D, 3D community, and other soul age groups that are doing this. Plus, their adaptive child self-ego is too busy judging, criticizing, attacking, and telling other people how to live life right than to pay attention to their own inner child wounds, their inner shame cycles, or unresolved trauma. attachment ruptures and insecurities and rigid thinking, this group mentality, the us versus them, stereotypes, generalized statements, shall I go on, and all the rest of the right ways to live life. So too many distractions to choose themselves, and enlightenment, expansion of consciousness. But oh, do they talk about the yoga they do, the meditation and the clairs they got. Yeah, love seeing when people talk about thinking that they're special. We're all special. But if you're really special, then you're going to look at anyone in their eyes and say, wow, you're an amazing person. And guess what? I could let you in, though, on how to be an even better person if you want when your emotional triggers come up. Now, people need to be open to wanting to move beyond their actual reactivity. They don't care about their biological rude behavior. They won't necessarily take steps. But for those who do care about their loved ones, and they care actually about being a person who's polite, for real, from within, so not to justify the energy of frustration that comes up. And I use the word polite because that's what I learned, since I'm very aggressive with my tone. That's why my mother and my sister and my twin still get the stories. They still get the tones. My regular listeners get the stories. And I was thinking, before I move on with our conversation, the people who point fingers, it's like the Zen story that Sadhguru shares. The disciples who were no disciples because they were not interested in transformation, they put forth their conditions on the guru, asking him to do this or that, which meant that their only intention was in throwing their weight around. And when you learn about functional adults from a person like Terry Real, he's a psychiatrist, psychologist. He works with couples and he helps them to work together to grow as people. Not only does he say, adults don't get abandoned, children get abandoned. The patriarchal society didn't support specific type of dynamic, so there's a balancing out that is happening right now with the ability to disengage from domineering and dominance and this type of unnecessary, because the masculine energy destroys. This is very interesting when you learn about masculine and feminine energy, and the feminine instead builds with what she has, so it's not gender specific, but the feminine is what we're seeing surface, and we want to balance that out, which is, by the way, what you do when you become a functional adult. So back to Terry Real, what he says is adaptive children, they're going to do a couple of things. They're not seeking to bring harmony when they interact with each other. So they don't have compassionate mirrors in their eyes. They got the judging, attacking. They're busy being children, so they're going to prove they're right or wrong to each other, yelling. They're already in yellow. Then it's going to be, let me control you in the situation. And if that's not going to work, they're going to make it all about themselves. There's just different ways that people engage in arguments with each other. And then they're going to retaliate because they begin to get pissy and withdraw. So when we see all those different groups of people, they're not doing anything different, really, than what they don't even realize is they're not doing anything different than our ancestors. They're not tapping into their higher potential either. They're simply put in their defense mechanism, and they are justifying the sensations that are upset that are coming up. They're justifying their emotional triggers. Then they like talking about 2-year-olds and 5-year-olds, and yet they don't practice. In the moment that you meet someone who talks to you in a way that is disrespectful, quote unquote, this is the moment that you have to do one of two things. You become more respectful. Why? Why would you do that? Let me think again. If you're pointing a finger, or if you're going to choose to walk the walk, to talk the talk, to breathe the breath, to actually be. 5D land, it's all been always about unconditional love and neutrality. For the longest time, I wondered about those 4D channelers. And being a channeler for me is something very different as a 5D mystic, because it's energy. We're all a part of consciousness. But what I do know is that I love to contribute to my mystics who want to be in 5D, because it's a very, very spiritual bypassing egoic world, the one of 4D land. I'm just going to put it that way. So they can know all they know about a lot of stories, but when I see all these people who love talking to me about the stars and Akash and about tarot and about love and about many, 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 many things that I actually live every day with love. And what I mean is don't dark forces of evil, there are people, and if they are not out of their shame cycle, then there are people who are self-destructive, to say the least. The people gossiping around them, they're destructive too. And in fact, here's where, if your home is not safe, and that would be if you're pointing that little finger at someone, you're not safe to that someone. That's because you're shaming someone who needs support, not shaming. And people who care understand enough about being a human, because this is a heart, we all have one. We all know the same type of heartbreak when people are disrespectful to each other. So again, when somebody is speaking to you, whatever their tone may be, you will notice that tone. Like my lovely mother likes to point out to me, I notice it after the fact with her, and I tell her, I was 2 years old when I began the tone. I'm sorry, it's really like reactive. I'm still working with it. Any other person, my tone can maintain at this point a pretty good balance by choosing this. Why? Because again, there's no need for us to disrespect each other when we have differences. It's called being a person who acknowledges, why would I hurt your feelings? What's the point? Now, to get here doesn't require any genius. It requires one choice. It's that of love and that of mutual understanding that we will not have the same opinions or emotions or thoughts or reality. It doesn't matter. This whole thing that people argue about, reality, there's one, there's not. Those are all the same adoptive children. If you're grown up, you don't argue about someone who's telling you something from their perspective. Because if you're grown up, it means you care about hearing another person's perspective. If you're in the argument or in the situation because you need to lift your weight, you need to be right, you're an adoptive child who doesn't know self-empowerment yet. You don't even know that your 2-year-old or 5-year-old is actually leading you. And really, when we see people that are their 2-5-year-old, we know how to handle them. Very few times we get involved, and I'm talking about the Enlightenment Soul Age person, with that type of communication. Because the minute that, again, someone presents to us something that is not quite in the space of respect, with love and kindness, they're not sharing compassion, they're not sharing that green light with us, we know that something's up. Their safety behaviors are up. So we will learn again and again and again how to respond to safety behaviors, because it's a shame defectiveness cycle that they're unaware of. It's unconscious for all people that are in yellow or red. The 5D person, the 5D mystic in the Enlightenment Soul Age group, let me specify, on this beautiful solstice day, is a person who only knows how to be a compassionate mirror and is consistently working on how to be unconditionally loving when presented with yellow or red by anyone, because there's no physical life threat when a person gets nasty with you. When they get nasty, they are in their own adaptive child response. They're in their own compulsive behavior. They're in their own compulsive attitude. They're not paying attention to their body. If they feel good, they don't feel good, how they're treating it. They have no energy for that. Their mind is literally not engaged in their cortex. They don't know what they're doing. They actually don't know what they're doing. The same way with the people pointing fingers. So when I see 4D mystics, I have a bunch of laughs and conversations with them and a lot more, but I can tell you they're not eyes that are meeting compassion in any way, shape, or form, or that 5D yet. And it's because they're choosing their own story of people being unworthy, or they're being unworthy, or people being at fault, or they're being at fault, they're being at revenge, others at revenge, humanity sucks, humanity sucks. That's all that comes out of the mouth of people that don't know how to be a human yet. Being a human as an adult, I should specify, it means you actually have some good psychoeducation, because we all will have the same beginning. It's a heart that is loving, and it's a heart that is in a body, and I shouldn't use the word loving. So the infant's body. It begins in a restorative embodied self. The mind moves into integration only if the person who's using it chooses to allow themselves to navigate thoughts and emotions, the sensations, in equanimity. This is in neutrality. This is in Kali, Shiva, and Krishna Lila land. There is no need for a belief to do this. There is simply put an input. How do I want to treat someone? I want to treat them the way I'd want to be treated. What type of human do I want to be? I think I want to be the type of human that I want to hang out with and be around. Okay, so can I talk about my opinions with other people, or do I need to gauge their intellect? Because, we can begin here. There's so many different ways people disrespect each other, simply put, because they don't actually agree to disagree, like normal human beings in the book of Integrated Minds and Restorative Embodied Self People, which even without yoga, we have learned how all on our own to use that ventral vagal nerve toning exercises. I don't know how, but I can tell you when I did yoga with Sadhguru, thank you Sadhguru, yes, I did notice an expansion of consciousness. In fact, I embodied even more light body, which is awesome. For my 5D mystics, I might do an episode separate from this one. So stay tuned. If I do, it might come out tomorrow. We'll do Solstice Enlightenment time or something like that. But yeah, with Sadhguru, I got a whole bunch of beautiful experiences. I love the man, and I love that he's out there. But what I was trying to get to is I didn't need any of that to do what we're talking about. What the psychoeducators teach is actually quite effective for people that want to be able to move out of emotional triggers that are unnecessary. You are still the same person, you're just more mature, and you're more beautiful. Because mature is beautiful. When you can be vulnerable, which means not reactive, which means you can have a heart-to-heart conversation for real, that's the most amazing experience that any person can have. Unfortunately, most people don't know how to be in their green because they're too busy pointing those fingers at each other. I thought it would stop at teenage year. Personally, I grew up, I was like, wow. And then with somatics, my eyes were opened up. Spirituality opened me up to our lovely field of consciousness, but that's actually something that we all connect to. So this is why for me personally, it wasn't challenging to move into this lovely space, the 5DC Enlightenment Soul Age group. And the more love that stems from within your body, that's how you move into this soul age group, because you're actually consistently open to new interactions. When somebody gets in their biological rudeness, of course, it's still off-putting to a person who is able to be in a restorative embodied self and an integrated mind, the 5D oneness consciousness people. However, there's an immediate reactivity with the knowledge safety behavior, yellow, red. If you can disengage from the story of there being evil, since there is none, what there is a shame defectiveness cycle in a person who's in a safety behavior. That's that physical mastery. So the reactiveness is disengaging from it being personal, because it's not, if you're an adult, of course, and you're dealing with a person who could use a set of compassionate, I see you, I will soothe you, I will keep you safe, and I will share with you and give you the raw talk of, hey, guess what? Great, but not great, but great. There's many ways we can talk about how to communicate with each other. And if you come at your conversation with love, thing is, it's only going to move into a loving way. Doesn't mean that people disengage from their interactivity, their reactiveness, because that's their choice. Again, not everybody wants to become their functional adults. So 5D land, it is a choice and not for all. And Enlightenment Soul Age Group is also a choice. I hope that this solstice brings you lots of love and joy. Have a great day.